Welcome to the next lecture of our pandas tutorial, and in this particular lecture we'll be understanding about the next component of this lecture, that is how to deal with the missing values in our data. So let's create a data having a null values and then we'll be treating with this null value. So let's copy the data we have created above. Okay. Here it is. So that's our data, and now I'll introduce a null value in it. So numpy dot nan. Nan is not a number, so it is considered as a null value in Python, right? So let's create a data frame, df1 pd dot data frame, and then pass the data. Okay, so here we go. We have created our data frame. Let's print it. So yes, this is our data set we are working on. Now, how to check the null values in our data frame? For that, we'll be using null function, isNull function. It will tell you that do we have a null value in data frame or not. So for that, we'll use data frame 1 and we'll use this function isNull. So where it's printing true, it means that this particular value is a null value, right? And where it's printing false, that means it's not a null value. So yes, we have a null value, right? So if we have a large number of data sets, then it's not possible to count each null value. So for that, we use this particular function again, and we simply use sum, and it will total the number of null values we have. So we have null value in the marks column, and we have only one null value. So this is how we can calculate the total number of null values in a particular column, right? Now, how to get rid of this null value? For that, we can simply use fillNA function. So let's create a new data frame, df2. Now, I want to fill the null value present in my data frame 1. So for that, I'll be using fillNA function, and I'm filling this null value with 1, right? So let's print the data frame 2. So you can see that initially we were having null value over here, but now we have filled this null value with 1. Okay, and since it was a float array, so when we are filling 1, it will fit our float value over here, right? We can also drop this null value. Instead of filling this null value, we can simply drop. So what will happen is, when we drop this null value, it will remove the entire row in which that particular null value was. So for that, we use drop NA. So we want to drop null values, so we simply use the function drop NA. So I want to drop my null values from data frame 1, so I'll use df1 dot drop NA. Okay, so let's check our data now. So you can see that initially we were having, let me just print data frame 1 also. Data frame 1. So initially we were having this null value over here, but now after using drop NA, it has removed this particular row entirely, right? And we are left with 3 rows only. Okay. Now what happened is, it has removed the row. We can remove the column as well. This particular drop NA was equivalent to axis.0 because by default this argument equals to 0. What I mean to say it, let's again copy the code. So a dot drop NA and mentioning x is equal to 0. That means we want to drop the row. So it will drop the row. But what if we want to drop the column? We don't want to drop the row, we want to drop the column. So for that, we'll mention x is equal to 1. That means we are now working on a column. So let's print it. Now you can see the column in which we were having that particular null value. This particular code has removed that entire column, right? So we have all the rows intact, but it has removed the column which was having this particular null value. Okay, so we can also create the data frame by removing this null value. How to do so? We'll simply use pd equals to a equals to pd dot. Now we use not null function. Okay, so not null, what we'll say is, we want data frame 1. Okay, we marks column. Basically we mention the column in which we are having that particular null value, and we mention the column because we have a null value in marks column. So we'll say that we want df1 marks column, but we don't want null value. So that means pd dot no null values in data frame 1 and marks. Okay, so let's just print it. Okay, what it will say is, it will say that these 3 particular entries 1, 2, 3 is not having any null values. It is not null, so it is true. But the 0th row was having a null value, so it's returning false for it. And using this particular code, we simply fetch our values from data frame 1. So df1a. So you can clearly see that it has removed this false entry and returning the rest of the entries. So it has basically removed the first 0th row. So this is how we deal with the null value, how we find a null value in our data frame. So this was all for this lecture. In the next section of our course, we'll be understanding about the stats involved in pandas. So till now, best of luck and keep following.